cannot give you back your homes or restore your dead to life. But perhaps I can give you justice in the name of our king.
Hey everyone, today I wanted to share my thoughts and ideas about a very popular theory and question. Are there ice dragons in Westeros? Just to start out, there are so many different theories about ice dragons and the world of Ice and Fire. Let me start from the beginning. So 2 decades previous to writing A Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin wrote this short story called The Ice Dragon. It was written in a poetic style and it shares quite a few similarities with The Song of Ice and Fire. With that being said, it also has clear differences in some aspects, and Martin has even stated that they are not set in the same world. But think about this. In A Song of Ice and Fire, we really only read and experience what happens in Westeros and Essos, or the known world. I mean, if you go to Google and do a quick search for a map of the world, a lot of it is unknown. We have to imagine there is more than what we just see. Some of you will immediately say no and dismiss this theory, but how possible could it really be that 2 different stories could take place on the same planet? Doesn't mean it can't be set in an unknown part of the world. Anyways, so with that in mind, what does the short story say about ice dragons? Well, it states that ice dragons are huge compared to their lesser fire-breathing counterparts. Oh, and yes, they breathe ice, not fire, hence the name. Ice dragons are said to be so vividly white, they look to be bluish in nature, and their skin is frosted over and cracks with movement similar to when a person walks on a thin sheet of ice. The story follows the life of a little girl who befriends an ice dragon and has a magical connection with it, much like Dany does with Drogon. She even rides on the back of the dragon, also coincidentally the same as Dany. The little girl was born in the long winter, which coincides with the seasons we see in A Song of Ice and Fire. Lastly, the little girl's mother died while giving birth to her. So the little girl, who has this magical bond with a dragon, had her mother die while giving birth. Who else with an affinity for dragons had their mother die, giving birth to them? Actually, 3 separate people: Daenerys, Tyrion, and Jon Snow. Tyrion dreamed of dragons as a kid, just like Dany, as did Jon. Tyrion did pretty well under pressure when unlocking Rhaegal and Viserion from chains in Meereen. Jon hasn't had any personal experience with dragons yet, so we don't have a visual reference of how he is around them. It is also good to note here that in the books, while Jon is at Castle Black, he thinks of ice dragons quite frequently. The road beneath the wall was as dark and cold as the belly of an ice dragon and as twisty as a serpent. The wind was gusting, cold as the breath of the ice dragon in the tales old Nan had told when Jon was a boy. The wind was blowing from east along the wall, cold as the breath of an ice dragon in the tales old Nan used to tell. Pretty interesting, huh? Not only is the idea of ice dragons in Westeros a real thing, but we have Jon Snow actually referencing them multiple times. And if that doesn't satisfy you, there have been hundreds of claimed sightings of ice dragons by sailors over the Shivering Sea, which is the body of water just north of Essos. So what are we supposed to make of this? The ice dragons are more than childhood bedtime stories, and in fact once and maybe still to this day roam around the uncharted territories of the Song of Ice and Fire planet? Far be it from me to say it's just folklore inside the story. Let's just say there are ice dragons lurking around. Here are a few of the most popular theories as for their location and or reveal. There is an ice dragon in the wall. Besides the reference to an ice dragon and the wall that Jon makes multiple times, there are other factors that have led to people believing the wall contains an ancient ice dragon. So the wall is about 8,000 years old. That's around the time when magic in the world was at its peak, or at least the maesters say. The wall is held up with strong magical components. Dragons thrive off of the magical spectrum, and since ice dragons apparently dwarf fire-breathing dragons, it would be plausible that they hold more magical properties, thus providing support for a grand wall. The Ice Dragon book even mentions that the dragons feature a somewhat shape-shifting attribute. That's as much as I'll say about it without spoiling the plot. I highly recommend reading it. It's only 112 pages. So back to the wall. Many believe if and when the wall comes down, we will see a dragon burst out of its foundation. I don't much subscribe to this theory just because I think it would be more likely that they reside somewhere north of Essos, complying with the reports of sightings over the Shivering Sea. Another theory is that there is an ice dragon under Winterfell. Now, don't get me wrong, Winterfell is the epitome of northern castles, and it definitely has some secrets to be uncovered, but an ice dragon seems implausible, and here's why. The residents of Winterfell have said they believe a dragon lives beneath them in the crypts, but the reference mentions that the hot springs that heat the grounds of the castle come from the breath of a dragon. An ice dragon would not be heating anything, rather quite the opposite. Now, this last theory is a huge spoiler to the short story of the ice dragon. If you want to go ahead and read it, turn off this video now so you don't have the story ruined. Okay, so remember when I talked about the shapeshifting properties of the ice dragon? Well, at the end of the book, the ice dragon disappears, leaving nothing but a pond that wasn't there before, and it is said that the pond always stays very cold and doesn't dry up. So if we were to ignore the fact that George R.R. Martin says that the two worlds are not related, we could say this pond actually exists at Winterfell. So in the first novel of A Song of Ice and Fire, Catelyn finds Ned sharpening his sword in the Godswood next to a pond that is stated as always cool to the touch. Many people want this pond to be the evaporated magical ice dragon from way in the past that still remains in current day Westeros. This is my favorite theory by far, but since Martin clearly stated the two worlds are completely different, I don't want to even get my hopes up, but you never know. George could be pulling our leg. Anyways, let me know what you think of the ice dragon theories and their relevance to Westeros. I would like to think they will play a part in at least the books at one point or another instead of it being just a fairy tale. Just a reminder, we are doing a Game of Thrones giveaway in about 2 weeks, so all you have to do to enter is just subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.